On paper, borders look clean. Straight lines, perfect shapes, a world divided neatly into nations. But look closer and you'll see the map is full of accidents, leftovers, and mistakes. Lines drawn in the wrong place by the wrong people for reasons that no longer exist. Some cut through cities while others trap people in foreign countries, and others exist because someone once used a ruler on a globe. Today, we'll have a look at the world to see the borders that make no sense and how they ended up this way. In the town of Barla, there's a cafe where one half of the dining room is in Belgium and the other is in the Netherlands. The border doesn't cut through the town once, it zigzags through 22 times, and Barla consists of 22 Belgian enclaves inside the Netherlands, and within them, 7 Dutch counter-enclaves. Small pieces of one country surrounded by another, sometimes only a few meters across. In the Middle Ages, local dukes traded land piecemeal, a farm here, a street there, and when Belgium became independent in 1830, nobody untangled the mess. Instead, surveyors simply marked every property with its rightful owner, creating one of the world's strangest checkerboard borders. Today, residents live normal lives, with 2 sets of postal codes, 2 police forces, and restaurants that pay taxes based on where the front door is. But if Barla's border looks like it was drawn blindfolded, another in the Middle East was drawn too straight, and that's what made it dangerous. Look at the map between Egypt and Sudan, and you'll see something suspiciously perfect. A straight line at the 22nd parallel, but inside of it lies a wedge-shaped piece of land that both countries claim. Here's the twist. Both countries claim the other border's definition. Egypt wants the straight 22nd parallel, while Sudan wants the older colonial border drawn in 1899 slightly further north, giving it to them instead. And the result becomes 2 official borders both legally defensible, while neither are recognized by the other. Even more strange is there's another patch nearby that neither country claims, because owning it would weaken their case. It's one of the few unclaimed pieces of land on Earth, a no-man's land born purely from paperwork. If Africa's straight lines came from colonial maps, one of the strangest borders on Earth comes from a different kind of mistake, one made on the wrong side of a river. Before 2015, the border between India and Bangladesh was a nightmare of geography. There were 102 enclaves belonging to India inside Bangladesh, and 71 belonging to Bangladesh inside of India, some of them no bigger than a few football fields. These fragments dated back to centuries-old treaties between regional kingdoms, and when India and Pakistan, later Bangladesh, gained independence, the enclave stayed, creating pockets of citizens who lived in one country while being surrounded by another, often without access to their own government. Some people in Bangladeshi enclaves inside of India were technically stateless because neither country could easily reach them. And after decades of negotiation, the 2 nations finally swapped enclaves in 2015, ending one of the most confusing border puzzles in history. Even today, parts of the India-Bangladesh frontier twist along rivers and fields in ways that defy logic, leftovers of maps drawn before GPS, satellites, and common sense. But not all weird borders come from colonial chaos. Some are born when nature itself refuses to sit still. Rivers make convenient borders until they change course. Between Croatia and Serbia, the Danube defines their boundary. However, rivers erode, shift, and carve new channels, while political maps stay frozen in time. When the Danube gradually shifted east, Serbia claimed the river's new course as the border. Croatia insisted on the old riverbed, which would give it more land, and the result became a patch of territory that nobody could agree on. A smaller triangle of no man's land called Liberland, declared by a Czech activist as a new country in 2015. It's not recognized by anyone, but the point stands. Even natural borders can stop making sense when nature moves and politics doesn't. But if rivers can't stay still, imagine what happens when borders are drawn where nobody has ever lived. The Alaska-Canada border looks clean now, but when drawn in the 1800s, nobody had actually surveyed. Russia owned Alaska, Britain controlled Canada, and they agreed the border would run along the crest of the mountains parallel to the coast. But the problem is that the mountains don't actually form a continuous ridge. When the US bought Alaska in 1867, both sides claimed the same valleys and fjords. The dispute lasted decades and nearly caused a war. In 1903, Britain sided with the United States, angering Canada and setting the border as we know it today. A jagged and inconsistent line that cuts through the wilderness. Even now, some towns sit just meters from the wrong side of the line. The border was made not by geography, but by assumption. A line drawn on a map before anyone checked that it was real. While the Alaska border came from ignorance, One border came from sheer stubbornness, a relic of history that splits an island in two. The Caribbean island of Hispaniola is shared by Haiti on the west and the Dominican Republic on the east, a border only 380 kilometers long, yet it divides two of the most contrasting countries in the world. On one side, Spanish-speaking, relatively stable, green forests and tourism, while on the other, French Creole, politically unstable and largely deforested. The border doesn't follow rivers or mountains, it cuts straight through valleys and farmland, separating communities that once traded freely. It was drawn during centuries of colonial rivalry between France and Spain, and despite being on a single island, the cultural and economic gap between the two sides is so wide you can see it from space. Green on one side while brown on the other. If Hispaniola's border divides two worlds, the next one divides a single city right down the middle of a street. In Cyprus, the capital city of Nicosia is split in two, one half belonging to the Republic of Cyprus, while the other to the self-declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, recognized only by Turkey. The UN-controlled buffer zone known as the Green Line runs straight through the city center. Barbed wire and abandoned homes mark where neighbors had once lived side by side. This border is not ancient or colonial. It was drawn in 1974 after a coup and a Turkish invasion. Nearly 50 years later, the line still divides the island, freezing it in time. From space, you can see a scar through Nicosia, proof that even in the modern world, borders can still split a single street, a single market, and a single city. But if Cyprus's border divides a city, one European country has a border that divides a literal building right down the middle of a room. In the small town of Kerkrade, a line on the ground marks the Dutch-German border, and that line passes straight through a building. The building had once contained a pub, a home, and even a cafe, and during COVID-19, half of the cafe had to close under German rules, while the other stayed open under Dutch. The border was adjusted in 2018 when Germany handed over a few small river islands to the Netherlands, but hundreds of places like this remain, tiny reminders that Europe's borders evolved through centuries of micro-treaties and land swaps, but never by logic. A perfect example of what happens when history forgets to clean up after itself. But the strangest border of all isn't between countries, it's inside of one. The DMZ is only 4 kilometers wide and 250 kilometers long, slicing Korea in half since 1953. It's not a border that's born of culture, language, or geography. It's the result of a war that never truly ended. Inside, nature has reclaimed the land, forests, rare animals, and absolutely no humans. On either side, two nations share history, blood, and language, yet remain divided by ideology. The DMZ shows how a border can exist not because people are different, but because they were forced to be. A human scar that's visible from orbit. Some borders come from war, while others from rivers, and some from pure geography. But one of the weirdest lines on Earth exists because the planet itself keeps moving. The summit of Mount Everest marks the boundary between China and Nepal, but that border literally moves. When tectonic plates shift, the mountain's height changes slightly. In 2020, Nepal and China even disagreed on how tall Everest actually was. The exact summit point, the border itself, rises and falls with earthquakes, glaciers, and time. It's one of the few borders in the world where nature refuses to stay fixed, a line that drifts with the planet's heartbeat. And while Everest line moves naturally, one final border moves by choice, redrawn by the people who live on it every single day. In one of the hottest places on Earth, the Danakil Depression, the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea has changed repeatedly due to war, peace treaties, and shifting control. This desert lies 125 meters below sea level, filled with salt flats and volcanic activity. The frontier has no clear landmarks, so both sides have redrawn it after each conflict. Villages have switched countries multiple times in a single generation. Families living on the border keep 2 ID cards, one for each country, in case control changes again. And here, the border is not a line, it's simply a guess rewritten by politics and heat. Some borders were drawn by mistake, while others were never meant to last. They cut through villages, rivers, families, and even living rooms. And as history keeps moving, through war, climate, and politics, the lines will keep changing as well. Because on Earth, even the things that look straight never really are. The world is full of mysteries, and we're here to crack them. Thanks for watching World Cracked. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.